Well, hello everyone. I'm Brenton Dickinson. I'm your professor for Religious Studies 101, which is an introduction to religion looking at the Western traditions. And so I want to send a little video just to give you an orientation of some things that you can expect, both in the first week of class, but also throughout the semester. Now, you might be wondering, why a video? Why not just do this on the first day? Well, the reality is that this is not my office in behind me, but is actually a dorm room at the University of Oxford in England. And I'm doing some work here at a research library, and so I won't be at the first day of class. I actually won't be there for the first three classes. We have classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday for about 50 minutes. And so I won't be there until September the 14th, Wednesday, September the 14th. So I'll miss that first week. So I wanted to give a little video here to welcome you to the class and also give you a sense of what's ahead. I'm pretty excited about this class. This is a fun class to do. This is a great way to introduce yourself to the Western tradition. And so I love teaching this class. Each time it's a little bit different, but we've established some things that we think works for first-year students as they're coming into this class. Well, so in this video I'm going to just ask some questions about what we're doing here, and then I'm going to talk about how the first week is going to look in my absence, and then a little bit about the semester by looking at the syllabus. Now, you can download the syllabus already on Moodle, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, if you've looked at your introductory textbook, you're going to discover that they aren't very good at defining what they mean by religion. And this is actually a really interesting problem. We struggle to know what we mean by religion. Is atheism a religion? Well, we tend to study it in religious studies as a cultural phenomenon, as a social phenomenon in sociology, and as a philosophical idea in philosophy. Is it a religion? Is it an anti-religion? What about something like Taoism, which doesn't actually have the same sort of sense of a god or the gods that we would get in more of the Western traditions? And so defining actually what we mean by religion is something that's very difficult. And so I'm actually not going to define it at all this semester. We're going to be looking mostly at particular traditions, and so then you'll actually be able to kind of define these things yourself. In the second week of class, we're going to be looking at one thing, though, that will help us, which is a definition of worldview. This is the way we experience life, the things we don't even always talk about out loud, but that define who we are as people and the way that we sit within our heart and within our world. And we'll look at that when we get there in a week or so. We're going to be studying the religions, and largely of the Western tradition, and largely this will be Christianity, and Islam, and then its parent, Judaism. And we'll be largely going in order of history. We'll do some introductory work at first, looking at some background material questions. Then we're going to go into Judaism, how it emerges as this very small kind of people within a great powerful world, but then becomes an important religion within its own context. How Christianity emerges from Judaism, and then a few centuries later, how Islam emerges from Judaism. We'll finish the class talking a little bit about indigenous religion in the Western world, and then also about some new religious movements, which is kind of an interesting way to finish off the class. And then we'll finally, just the last lecture will include a sense of kind of what's happening globally these days. So that's the outline. That's what we're going to be looking at in this class. And so the textbook that you have is going to be a key resource for that. So if you need to pause the video, that's okay, but make sure that you get the syllabus. We're going to look for just a few minutes at the syllabus and then go from there. Now, the textbook is a supplementary resource to the lectures. I won't be covering all the things in the textbook, and I'll be allowing you to find some things out. I'll be pointing to the textbook from time to time. I've got it here on my cell phone, and so here I'm reading. This is about Megiddo, so I'm partway into chapter 2 in my cell phone version. It's not a great way to have the text, but it is good in that it holds your highlights and it's a little less expensive. The textbook is by a number of people. And it's actually the 4th edition, and it's actually taking a long time to get to the 4th edition. So you should be able to find the 4th edition from 2014 either used or in our bookstore. William Oxtoby, Amir Hussain, Roy Amore, and actually a few others are involved in the creation of this 4th generation of a textbook. They're also involved in this larger project of the Eastern Religion textbook as well. You'll need the textbook, and we'll talk a little bit about what you're going to do in the first week with the textbook. You have some reading assignments already. We're also, in the syllabus, you'll see after we talk about required texts, we're going to be looking at the assignments that are due for you. So there's basically 3 sets of assignments. The first is the exams. The exams are made up of, there's just a midterm and a final exam. They're both going to be about an hour and 15 minutes to a little bit longer to write them. They'll happen in the midterm will happen in later October, and then the final exam will happen during the final exam period. They're not meant to be cumulative. The final exam doesn't have a whole lot more detail that you'll have to get down, but there will be some essay questions that may capture your whole experience of the semester thus far. So the exams are each worth 30, and they'll typically have some sort of detailed questions about fact-based things, so multiple choice questions or short answer questions, and then a handful of essays which you'll have to respond to. That'll come. If you have anything that you need, if you're a second language student or if you have other accommodations, I allow more time for writing of exams if necessary. So the exams are there. There's also going to be a research paper. This can be on really any topic that you want, and we'll talk a bit more about this as we get into class. It's due the last day of November. And so you'll have plenty of time for us to discuss this. A standard, get into the library, get some research done, and teach me something that you've discovered in the process of kind of digging into a particular question. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Also, class is important. I take attendance, I require class attendance, and I ask you to actually engage with the class material. As we have discussions, as you ask questions, as you engage, as we think about different ideas, it's important for you to bring your own perspective to the class. This is a class that will have people from all kinds of different backgrounds and probably different parts of the world as well in the classroom. And so you will each bring your different ideas to the space that we're talking about. And so it's important to share those things and to engage together. And so we'll be doing some of that within the class, and there's a bit of space there for class marks. And that's largely how the class works. It's a pretty standard breakdown for a first year class. And the classes will largely be me lecturing using some sort of PowerPoint slide, which I will then later share with you on Moodle, and then going into some discussion pieces and exploring things. I have an outline in the last page of the syllabus, and we'll do our best to follow it, but there'll be things that we'll have to leave and add as things go throughout the semester. Okay, now what happens next? Okay, so I'm not going to be there on the first day. So you may have, hopefully, as long as you've logged into your student account, you should have this Moodle page has popped up for you, and you will have gotten this video, and that's really good. If this video is replacing our standard first day opening kind of thing, but I have a number of things that are going to happen over the first week, even though I'm not there physically with you. Okay, so the first thing is I want you to read the first 2 chapters of the textbook. The first chapter is a general conversation about religion. It's much more broad. It doesn't define religion, but it will teach you some ways that people think about religion. And some of you will be like, well, I know what religion is. And that may be true. Although these days it's actually, there's more and more of a chance that somebody will not really have encountered religion up close. And that's why some students take this class. Chinese students, for example, unless they're older, may not ever have actually seen or experienced a religious person. And so it's important, too, in our post-Christian Western culture that we come to an understanding of religion, at least academically. Excuse me. And so that first chapter, even if you know religion pretty well, it'll give you some interesting history and some kind of the ancient human religion kind of perspective things. The second chapter is really starting to get us into the background of the Hebrew religion, the Judaism, and some of the context out of Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia and things like that, that will provide the background material. I won't be spending a lot of time I won't be spending any time in class going over the first chapter, but I'll give you some ideas here about what will happen from that in a second. The second chapter I'll spend when I return in a week. We will do a bit of background material before we get into Jewish history. So that's into the Jewish religion. So we will be doing that in a week's time. But as part of this first chapter, one thing I don't know that the book really addresses really well is the question about why. Why should we study? And why does religion matter? I mean, if we're largely a post-Christian world, slowly Canada, the United States, Europe, largely are moving past these religious moments. Why does religion matter? Why should we think about it? Why should we study it? And so I've made actually a series of videos. These are short 3 to 5 minute video clips that are recorded largely here in the United Kingdom that will give you a sense of how we can answer this. It won't cover all of the ways that we can answer the question of why religion matters, but I want us to think about the way we think about ancient peoples, the way religious structures work, the way that churches and communities work. These are the kinds of questions that I want us to start bringing about even before we know much about the religions that we're going to be studying. They're short videos, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and not very well produced. They're all very poorly done. They're just taken with my cell phone or with my son's iPod Touch, and then with a kind of popped into a video editor just to clean it up a bit. Nothing special. These are not professional pieces. I'm not a professional documentarian, I guess it is. But they're fun, I think, as ways to think. It's a great way to kind of think about what it means to study religion and why it's important in our world. And so there'll be a half dozen or 8 of these, and they'll go up on Moodle for you, and I'll number them so you know how to watch them. Altogether, it might take you half an hour or 45 minutes to watch all the videos, as well as read that first chapter in tandem with those videos. And then next Wednesday, the second Wednesday of class, we'll come together, and after you've read that second chapter, then we'll begin to look into the background history before we get to Judaism. So those are some important things for us to cover, and I'm pretty excited about this experience. Now, one thing that I want to cover is a little bit of class culture that I'll probably address again. In our class, we're going to be dealing with things that are really quite personal to people, spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs. And so it's important that we create a space of respect and learning. Now, it's not that we can't disagree, and we should disagree when we do, and we should say it. And it's not that we can't say hard things, but we're going to do it in a very respectful and critical way. In particular, I find textbooks like the one that we're using for this class, I find that people who are religious, so Jewish people, in the case of this class, Jewish people or Muslims or Christians or Aboriginal spiritual people, or people actually that are part of what we call cults or new religious movements, they often read these texts and they have sort of 2 experiences. One is it seems like the text belittles their religion by reducing it to just kind of something that happened in history or something that happens in culture. Whereas the people of those religions feel that their religion or their spirituality is actually special and important and central. And so I get that. I understand that's the limits of a textbook, and it's really my key disappointment with this textbook, besides the cost, an outrageous price for the book, even though it does have pretty shiny pictures. The second thing that religious people experience when they read a textbook like this is that they never quite feel like their faith is described well. Okay, so my commitment to you as a professor, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a week or so, is that in classroom, I'm going to do my best to present the material fairly and openly. And if it's not capturing, and I won't reduce it just to history. I'm not going to just do that. I'm going to show how amazing these materials are. And if you feel like I'm missing something, it's important for you to bring that up, and that'll be no problem at all. This happens all the time, and we have this kind of an open class. And so I'm pretty excited for us to be able to engage this way. If you have any questions, email me, bdickinson@upei.ca, and make sure that, don't forget to not show up on Wednesday for the first day of class, but be prepared for the following Wednesday, for Wednesday, September 14th, where we'll begin a great semester together. Cheers.